Okay, yesterday we looked for a source for the tashlumin for atzeres, despite the fact that atzeres is one day, you could go bring the oilistry and shalom chagigah for the consequent the 7 days afterwards. We had two sources: one Rabbi Shia, the hekesh to matzah, and two Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, the juxtaposition of mikroi kodesh to the ksir of cutting the wheat. We said obviously you can't be cutting on yontif, so it must be you cutting what on chol hamoed. Yet it's mikroi kodesh, and therefore what the ksir chitim is what is tashlumin is shvuas. That's the zman kotzer. Rabbi Yishlakish wanted to say we can learn out from the word zman kotzer itself. When's the day you can cut? Obviously, it must be chol hamoed. Rabbi, on the same pasuk it says Chagigah Asif, and Rabbi Yochanan retorted to him, if you're going to dash on Chagigah Asif, you can say Bismana Asif. So it can't be on Yontif itself. It must be the next day. It must be Chol Hamoed. Chol Hamoed said, Rabbi Yochanan, are you able to go ahead and be Asif? And Reish Lakish did not answer him. So we can see from the conversation between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan that Asiyas Melacha on Chol Hamoed is Asir. So it's very, very interesting. We just did a whole Masechta Moed cotton that it's Asir to Melacha Chol Hamoed, except for 5 things we discussed: a Dava Ovid, the Dava Shal Rabim, Tzibor. We discussed different things, and the source for it is this daf. Chagigah Yudches. In Chagigah Yudches, we'll see the source for what for Chol Hamoed being Gasser. Apparently, it's a source that's the Raisa. We'll get into a Tosfos and a Ritva to explain whether it's the Rabbanon or not. We'll see. Bez Hashem. So that's what we're going to see right now. 3 brises, 5 sources for what. For Chol Hamoed being Asa B'Asiyas Malacha. So we're on Yud Ches Amid Aleph. Yud Ches Amid Aleph. We are 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, about 10, 11 lines down. Mechlal Travayu Sfir Lahu the Chol Shel Moed Asa. Both Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan obviously hold that what that Chol Hamoed be B'Aser B'Asiyas Malacha. Menani Mili. How do you know Chol Hamoed is Asa B'Asiyas Malacha? Taner Rabbanon. It says as Chag HaMatzos Tishmar. Tishmar, we said, fellas, is a lashon of Alois Hasei, Pen, Al, Shamar. We had a few places in Shas that the lashon of Tishmar of Shin Mem Reish, right, is the lashon what of Asiyas Issa. Shimon, we're on Yud Ches Amid Aleph. We are about 13 lines down. We're explaining why Chol Hamoed it's Asa B'Asiyas Malacha. Why Chol Hamoed it's Asa B'Asiyas Malacha. And we're saying es Chag HaMatzos Tishmar Shivas Yamim. So 7 days Tishmar you should watch from doing what? Limud al Chol Hamoed she'asa b'asiyas malacha. For those 7 days, there's a shin mem reish. There's a lav. What's the lav? Doing malacha. So says the Gemara, we have a source for what that Isra of Chol Hamoed being asa b'malacha. Dimar Rabbi Yoshia. These are the words of Rabbi Yoshia. However, or Rabbi Yeshaya, Rabbi Yonason disagrees. In other words, he agrees in principle that you can't do malacha, but he disagrees with the source. The source is not the pasuk as Chag HaMatzos Tishmar. It's a different source. What's the source? Kal v'chaymer. I have a kal v'chaymer. Umar Rishon b'Shvi'i. Day 1 and day 7 of Mak, or could be Sukkot or what or Pesach. She'ein kedusha lefneihem ulachrayim. That there's no kedusha before the first day of Pesach. There's no kedusha after the 7th day of Pesach. Nonetheless, asa b'asiyas malacha, it's asa to do work during those days. Chol shel moed sheyesh kedusha lefnei ma'achreim. Chol shel moed, day 2 and day 6 of the moed, which is sandwiched between day 1 and day 7, where it's asa to do malacha. Ein edin sheyasa b'asiyas malacha. So we have a kal v'chaymer. Day 1 of Yontif, day 7 of Yontif does not have Kedusha before or after. Right? Well, day 7 actually has Kedusha before, but doesn't have Kedusha after. Right? Nonetheless, it's Asa B'Asiyas Malacha. Chol Hamoed, which is sandwiched between 2 days that are Asa Malacha, 1 and 7. Ain't I didn't know what that should be Asa B'Asiyas Malacha. So I have a Kal V'Chaymer, I do not need a pasuk. Says the Gemara, I have a Kash in your Kal V'Chaymer. Again, a Pircha Koldu, any question on a Kal V'Chaymer knocks it out. Any question on a Kal V'Chaymer knocks it out. The 6 days of the week will disprove your point. Why? They have Kedusha in front of it and afterwards. The 6 days of the week is sandwiched between what? Is sandwiched between 2 Shabbos. Right? 6 days of the week. You had Shabbos before and Shabbos afterwards. and want mutar mesias malacha, they're mutar mesias malacha. So we see the sandwich theory doesn't hold water. If your whole premise is anything that's sandwiched between two devar kedusha should be also be malacha, the days of the week would go ahead and disprove that theory. Why? Because it's sandwiched between two Shabbosais, and yet it's mutar b'malacha. Says no, there's still a distinction. Malashisa shemei bereishis sheimem carbon musaf. There's no carbon musaf. Time b'cholish shamoy sheyesh carbon musaf. It has a carbon musaf. So in other words, putting the two together, one, you're sandwiched between two kedushas, and two, you have a musaf. Those two factors would influence and say it's asa b'siyas malacha. Masha'en came the 6 days of the week, which only has the factor of being sandwiched between the two, but does not have the carbon musaf. Memela will be muta b'siyas malacha. Says the Gemara will show that musaf is a factor in that it's asa b'siyas malacha. We'll see from Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh echiach sheyesh bo carbon musaf. The Rosh Chodesh has a carbon musaf. Umuta b'siyas malacha. And it's mutter what? It's mutter b'siyas malacha. Rosh Chodesh is mutter b'siyas malacha, despite that it has a musaf. So l'chayra back to the kal v'chayim is not a good kal v'chayim. Says Mal Rosh Chodesh ain't called mikra kodesh. Rosh Chodesh is not called mikra kodesh. Time v'cholish l'moed should call mikra kodesh. So hayol v'kar mikra kodesh dinu shasa b'siyas malacha. In other words, putting those three factors together. One, it's sandwiched between the two. Two, there's a musaf. And three, the fact that it's mikra kodesh. Those three factors would go ahead and contribute to the fact that it's asa b'siyas malacha and cholamayid. So says Rabbi Yonason, I don't need Rabbi Yoshi's limit from cholish shalamayid of eschag hamatzis tishmar shivas yamim. I have a kal v'chaymer. I don't need a pasuk. So we have one brisa with two sources, either a pasuk eschag hamatzis tishmar shivas yamim or a kal v'chaymer from regular days. Says the Gemara, Tanya Idach, a second brisa, kol melechas avoda leisasu. Any melechas avoda you shouldn't do. Kol melechas avoda leisasu. Kol melechas avoda what you shouldn't do. Tanya Idach, a second brisa that we're going to bring in to show that it's also the melacha on cholamayid. Kol melechas avoda leisasu. That's a limit on cholish shalmoid. Right is right next to the pasuk of Shivas Yomim Takrivu Isha. 7 days should be kabbanis, and then it says Kol Malachas Leisasu. So therefore, you're not limited to the first 2 days, the first day and last day of Yom Tif, because it says juxtaposed to it, it's called Shivas Yomim. So all 7 days you shouldn't do work. So l'chayra it includes chalamoid. So we have a third source. Rabbi Kiva Oimer, a fourth source. In it sorach, I don't need that pasuk. Hari Oimer, it says Elamor Hashem Mikray Kodesh. If it's speaking about the first day of Yom Tov, how we find them Shabbat Shabbat, it already says it should be a day of rest. In Bishvi, the 7th day, never Shabbat sign. So L'chayra, Mikrei Kodesh can't be going on day 1 and day 7. It already says Shabbat sign. So Mikrei Kodesh must go on the intermediary days known as Chalamoid, which will go ahead. So now we have a fourth source. What for Chalamoid? Hayinakas Medaber El B'Cholish Shalmoid. Lamdecha Sha'asa V'Siyas Malacha. Tanya Yidach, third brisa. Sheishes Yomim Toichel Matzah Yisum Yom Hashvi Yatzeres Lashem. You should go ahead 6 days eat matzah, and the 7th day should be Atzer Hashem. Atzer is always the lashon of stopping doing malacha. Mashvi Atzer, just like Shvi is Atzer, Av Sheshimei Atzurim. So too, you get 7 days are what? All Asa, Chol Shalmai. Mashvi Atzer, B'chol Malacha, Av Sheshim Malacha. So I may think just like the 7th day is also doing any work, so too the 6th day is also doing any work. Just like the 7th day is also doing any work, so all 6 days doing work. Talmud Laim, the pasuk says. Ubayoy Hashvi Atzeresh, and the 7th day, Hashvi Atzur, the 7th day is also become malacha. Vein Sheisisham Matzurim become malacha. Halay Masu Nakosavel Chachamim Loim Lacha. Eze Yemasa, Eze Yemuta, Eze Malacha Asur, Eze Malacha Muteres. So this last din that it's giving up to the Chachamim. So we have a source. What for a Chalamoid? We have 5 different sources, and the last source is very, very interesting. That's what we're going to focus on a little bit. Because it says Shvi Atzeres. Atzeres means what? From doing malacha. So it can't be Chalamoy. Shevit must be Chalash Shemoy. If you learn from Atzeres, just like on the 7th day you can't do any malacha. So too I'd say on the 6th day you can't do any malacha. So the pasuk says, right, that it says B'chol malacha It says that it's given over to the Chachamim to decide which is which. So if you would just have this Gemara, you would simply say that the halacha of Chodesh Shel Moed, to the issue of doing malacha, is in fact deraisa. You'd say it's also deraisa. Clearly, it's also deraisa. Again, psukim, 5 different sources. Chal is one of the Yugim Amidos. So in other words, so I have 5 sources to tell me that it's also do malacha Chol Hamoed. Let's see Taisus. This is a very well-known Taisus. If you have your Gemara, mark this Taisus, guys. It's you do it. It's Taisus you should mark. This Taisus is one of the Velt's Taisusin. Chodesh Shel Moed asa b'siyas malacha l'chayra mashma. Apparently, from the Gemara it appears the malacha, the mitzvah bei midaraisa, that malacha is also daraisa. The mapik lei mi pasuk, they bring it from psukim. The chemi perik based the Moed cotton, which is the ikas. It's funny, the ikas source, ikas sugya, but not the main source. It's fascinating that the main source is in Chagigah, but the sugya is in Moed cotton. Avol midrabon, it says avol midrabanan ela afilu b'chalash hamoed daraisa. It's mashma says the word daraisa. The Chaim Pirish Hasam b'kuntris. Rashi says over there it's daraisa. The kosher le Rabbeinu Tam says Rabbeinu Tam, das is schwer. Dem kain dava ha'avod v'kamim malachas sharinon. We said tzarchei tzibor or tzarchei moyed, or it's not a ma'isa umin. We had different atayrim, right? We had different atayrim. Hasam hechi mystery. If it's an issa malacha, how could it be muta? Hechim matzinu issa deraisa. Where do you find an issa deraisa? Miktsasa yasa, miktsasa muta. Guys, are you allowed to go ahead and walk and carry on Shabbos? No. Is there ever a time you can carry on Shabbos? Forget the Erev. Is there a time you can carry on Shabbos? No. You're not allowed to cook on Shabbos. Is there any time you're allowed to cook on Shabbos? No. On Yom Tov, you're not allowed to do malacha. Is there any time you're allowed to do malacha? That's not Oichel Nefesh? No. So again, Rabbeinu Tam has a big problem. Rabbeinu Tam says, if there's a waiver over here built into the system for the Chacham to decide what's awesome, what's mutter, it's mashma, that's the Rabbanan. And so this is a huge machlokas rishonim. I mean, absolutely huge. Rashi seems to say it's the Raisa. Toisus, Rabbeinu Tam over here says it's the Rabbanan. In fact, I don't know if we looked at this. I'm not sure we did or we didn't. Who remembers these days? But the Ber Halacha in first chelik of in Siman Tuf Kaf Lamed Chol Hamoed, he says, "I am Ishtaburu Masha Kasav Yeshvam Shemid the Rabbanan." There are those who hold the Rabbanan, and he says it's the Das of the Rambam. It's Rabbeinu Tam here in Taisvis. It's in Daf Chagigah. It's the Smag. And then he brings a whole list of a litany of ones who said it's the Raisa. So the Chayri, this Machloikis is very powerful. Machloikis the Raisa the Rabbanan. Apparently, Rabbeinu Tam's Taina, guys, is a great Taina. Rabbeinu Tam's Taina is a great Taina. Really, it is. It's fantastic Taina. How's it possible to tell me it's a Din Raisa, yet it's given over the Chum decides which days yes, which yes, which not. It's very schwer. So I heard from Rabbi Bronstein. He quoted a person of Asher David May, who quoted a Keren Oira, but I have a source. They're right. I have a Rishon that says what the Keren Oira says, and here's the Rishon. Now, to be magdim before we go through this, as derech hakdama, can you see this? I can make this bigger. Before we go, could you see this? Yeah, you see it? Do you see it, yes or no? Yeah, okay, good.
Yes.
Okay, before we go through this, I'd like to go ahead and how do you view the din of what on Chol Hamoed? How do you view that? So based upon Rabbeinu Tam, we're viewing it the following way. The Isser is an Isser Malacha. It's also to do Malacha on Chol Hamoed. The same way it's also to do Malacha on Yantif. The same way it's also to do Malacha on Shabbos. That's one way to view it. There's a second way to view it. That the Isser Malacha on Chol Hamoed is different than the Isser Malacha on Shabbos and Yantif. It's not be'etzim in the etzim asiyas malacha. It's a shter in my simchus yantif. In other words, it's not pshat that it's also to do to do malach and chalamoid, it's also to share my simchas yontif. If I'm going to do malacha on chalamoid, it's going to share my simchas yontif. It's not pshat, it's also the same way Shabbos is also, the same way pig is also, the same way any issa the Torah, shatness, any issa. It's not the same as that. It's a issa that's predicated upon my simchas yontif. In other words, I can't do something that's going to go ahead and share my simchas yontif. Says the Ritva over here, she'ein tam yisurin shavin. The isser is not equal. Kitam isser malacha b'moyed. The reason for the isser malacha on chalamoid who mishum tircha. You shouldn't trouble yourself. Right? We spoke about. I remember mashka besa shlochin. It's a tircha. Ushloy lemayit b'simchas haregel. By doing tircha, it's going to take away from your simchas haregel. Ulefikach hitiru chachamim kol shu tzarich moyed. The chachamim permitted anything on the moyed. The chol shu dava avid, or anything that's what is a dava avid. Kidei shlayed doyeg alavei dasai. You shouldn't worry about your loss. V'nimna misimchas yontif, and hold back simchas yontif. V'cheni tiru schar pula she'en la mayochal. A guy doesn't have what to eat. It's going to share his yontif. Better work and get some food than not do it. Abel isam malacha b'yadalid ein la mayatircha. The issa of yadalid, that's he's comparing to erev yontif. So it's a beautiful, guys. It's a beautiful lumdus over here to make a chilik, and perhaps this pshat in Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam learned, the guys, that the Isser of Chalamoid is the same way the Isser of Shabbos, the same way the Isser of Yontif. If that's the case, where do we come up with this ability to go ahead, and mitigate it? Oh, it's a davar of it, schapula, tzarchi rabim, tzarchi mayit. What does that mean? Says the Ritva, I'll tell you what it means. It means that it's not the same geder whatsoever. It's two totally different halachas. The Isser of the Isser of Shabbos is an Isser bifnei atzmai. It's an Isser on the day itself. On Yontif, it's an Isser on the day itself. To eat pig is an Isser on the day itself. Those are not subject to the Chachamim. The Isser to do malacha on Cholamoid is not Etzem and Din in Isser malacha. It's a din and taking away from my simchas Yontif. If a person works, he's not besimcha. Memela, if I don't do the work, it's gonna share my simchas Yontif. Then I will be able to work. If it's a davar of it and I'm going to take a financial loss, it's going to share my simchas yontif. Do the work. There's no isser malacha. Do the work. There's an isser not to be besimcha. Do the work, and you'll be besimcha. If you're a schar, you're a poil. There's a mitzvah to eat, and you don't know what to eat. Go work. Why? Because if you don't work, you're not going to have simchas yontif. It's a whole different way to view it. And Mela quite beautifully now. Ken zayin this is their raisa. It's taka der raisa, like Rashi. And then the other Rishonim hold that way. Rabbeinu Tam's kasha. There's an etzem difference between what chalamoid and the other days. It's a beautiful hezbollah to a very, very nice sugya. Okay, let's go on. Let's finish up. 5 lines from the bottom. Umutorim behesped v'tainis, and it's muta behesped v'tainis. Shlo lekayim es divrei ha'amurim. Atzeres achas Shabbos. Okay, what did we say? We went in the Mishnah. We said that if Shavuos falls out on Friday, Beis Shammai said you can't bring it on Friday, you can't bring it on Shabbos, you bring it on Sunday, which is called Yom Tevuach. Beis Hillel says if it falls out on Shabbos, you bring it on Sunday. Okay, you bring it on Sunday because you can't bring it on Shabbos. However, that Sunday we're going to make marked differences, right? Because we want to make sure that the Tzedaikim, that Atzeres always falls out on a Sunday. So the Kohen Gadol would wear, we saw Machlokes Rashi and Tosfos about wearing the begodim, right? Whether he wouldn't wear nice clothing, or he would like Rashi, or the big day kahuna like Tosfos. And we do things, it's mutter behesed of tainus. We do things to go ahead and publicly decry this is not Shavuos, right? So says the Gemara, that's what we're discussing now. Says the Gemara about Tanya, Maisa umeis Alachsa belud, a woman named Alachsa died in Lud. Nichsu kol Yisrael l'sayfdoi. V'loinichem Rabbi Tarfin. He didn't let it. Mefei sheyantiv shel atzeres laya. Right? It was yantiv atzeres. It says yantiv salkadaitach. He be yantiv mikasti. They can't come on yantiv. El em mefei sheyom tevuachu. It's yom tevuach. So you see, you could say a hesped of yom tevuach. Kasher on a Mishnah. So it's like kasha. Can be yontif shchaliyas achar Shabbos. Can be yontif shchaliyas b'Shabbos. If it's yontif that falls out after Shabbos, of course, if it falls out after Shabbos, then you won't be able to. You'll be mutter behesper b'tainis. You know why? Because Shavuos will be on a Sunday. Can be yontif shchaliyas b'Shabbos. If yontif falls out, what? I guess achar Shabbos means during the week, and this falls out on Shabbos, right? So if it falls out during the week, then it's not a problem. Why? You can be mass all you want, because no one's going to make a mistake. We want to go ahead and be mitzvah leaving shel tzedaikim, and that's Shavuos, right? So therefore, we're going to go ahead and be mutter the hesed b'tainis to be mitzvah leaving shel tzedaikim. Okay, the rest of the Masechta is halachas of Tumah B'Taira. From here till the end of the Masechta, the halachas Tumah B'Taira. The Pashut segue is that on the Moyed, a person has to be B'Taira. A person can't be B'Tumah. He has to be what? He has to be B'Taira. It can't be B'Tumah. So the halachas of Tumah B'Taira leading to the Moyed. In addition, at the end of the Masechta, we're going to see a special halacha that they made certain waivers. They made certain waivers for the Amaratzim vis-a-vis Tumah B'Taira on the Moed, on Chol Moed, and on the Yontif itself. Okay, we know we're just a derech hakdama, a very short hakdama. Most of these we're discussing, guys, is adine derabanan. Most of these are what adine derabanan. Halachas derabanan of Tumah B'Taira. So we're familiar with the concept of a source of Tumah. A mace is the quintessential source of Tumah. A sheretz is a source of Tumah. A mitzoira, a zov, a mitzoira, a nevela. All these are sources that create Tumah. As Tumah gets passed down, the Tumah gets diluted, right? Depending upon. So the first level of Tumah, if an Av touches anybody or anything, it's Tameh. It becomes a Rishon. If Av touches anyone or anything, it becomes a Rishon. If a Rishon touches a person, nothing happens to the person, because a Rishon cannot be mitama adam v'kelim, only ochel mashke. A Rishon can only be mitama food and drink. If it touches something, even chulin, it becomes a sheni. That's where chulin ends. Chulin cannot be more than a sheni del tuma, but truma extends one more level, shlishi. Truma would end at the shlishi level, it would not extend to the revi level. Kachim would extend to revi level. So if a foodstuff touches kachim up to the revi level, beyond the revi level, it's not tamei, with the exception of mechatos. The mechatos, where it's mixed with the afer of the paraduma, there's an extra stringently chumra there that'll be tam even to the fifth level. We discussed this by I think Masechta Yoma, we discussed it, is that since they were, when they did the paraduma, they dafko metamat full yoim, the tzedaikim, again to the libet shel tzedaikim, that full yoim is also to do it, they dafko metame him, right? So therefore, he was tamei. So therefore, since we were makel in that area, we were machmer in a bunch of other areas. In Masechta Shabbos, we discussed many halachas of Tumah B'Taira, predominantly discussed in the attic of Chanayim and Chaneloi, and it was in this attic they came up with these, and they bought 300 barrels of wine, of oil. We just discussed this. And one of the things that they said is the yadayim ashniyos, the hands are a sheni l'tumah. Okay, now there's different dargis. We just discussed different dargis of tumah. There are different things there's chulin, the food stuff, chulin, ma'isa sheni, truma, kachim, and the fifth thing is the paraduma. So as we're going to see, from going to leniently to severe and severe to lenient, back and forth. Let's see the Gemara. It says the Mishnah. Now, guys, your hands are a sheni. Your hands are a sheni. L'chulin. You have to wash your hands for chulin, which is a chiddush, correct? Since chulin, you can't make a shlishi. Why do we wash our hands? Guys, you know why we wash our hands? Because of the kahanim. Because of it's called srach truma. Srach truma means the habitual halacha of truma. We want the kahanim that a sheni can make a shlishi by truma. So for the kahanim to be nizer in washing the hands, we wash our hands as well. It's Gemara in chulin, kalabasa. So noitlan liyadayim lechulin. You wash your hands liyadayim lechulin. Ula ma'isa sheni, we wash our hands for ma'isa sheni. Ula truma, and we wash our hands for truma. Ula kodesh matbilin. When you kachim, if you're going to touch kachim, it's not enough to wash your hands. You actually have to stick your hands in a mikvah. You have to stick your hands in a mikvah. Again, that's an ed of chumrah for what? For kachim. And regarding touching mechatos, this what in nitmu yadav, if your hands are tamei, meaning in the begois of in your hands, it's not enough to put your hands in the mikvah, but nitma gufa, you have to go ahead and put your whole self in a mikvah. So netilas yadayim and tfilas yadayim would not help for mechatos. Only tfilas kol gufay in a mikvah of abarim sa would help vis-a-vis coming in contact with what? The mechatos. Tavel l'chulin. Let's say you were tavel l'chulin. Chuchzik l'chulin. Your kavanah was l'chulin. And also l'maisa sheni. In other words, you won't be able to touch maisa sheni if your whole tefillah was for chulin. It stops at that level. Tavel l'maisa, chuchzik l'maisa, and your kavanah, and chuchzik when it touches niskave, and your kavanah was for maisa. Also l'truma. It will be also for the next level. Tavel l'truma, chuchzik l'truma. Also l'kodesh, the next level. Tavel l'kodesh. That's the bottom line. That if you tobel for the kal, it's not going to help for the chomer. However, toivel the chomer mutal the kal. So if I would be toivel for mechatos, it would help for all the other four below. If I'll toivel for kachim, it would help for the three below, but it wouldn't help for what? For mechatos. If I'll toivel for truma, it wouldn't help for kachim mechatos, but it would help for ma'aser sheni and truma. Mutal the kal. Tobel huksik. If I'm toivel, I go to the mikvah, but I didn't have kavanah even for what? For chulin. Like tovel, nothing. It's like you went to. It's like you washed yourself. Nothing. Okay, now anyone that's not nizav tumah taira is called an amoretz. Amoretz here does not mean in the traditional amoretz. It means the person who's not nizav tumah taira. A person who's nizav tumah taira will call the chaver. A person who's not nizav tumah taira will call an amoretz. So big day amoretz, the begodim amoretz. Midras is considered an avatuma, leprushim to those people on nizavatuma v'taira. Big day prushim, midrash loichle truma. The big day of prushim we consider an avatuma to those to kahanim. Big day ochle truma, midrash the kodesh. Big day kodesh, midrash the chatas. So if you look at Rashi tells us the reason. Loichle truma says Rashi. Go down Rashi before the end. Kahanim, elu mailas midivei seifrim. All these mailas that we're discussing in this mission are all the rabbanim. She'amru who say she'ain shmiras tarasan shel elu chashuv shmira etzel elu. The shmira, the watching of the kachim in this is not considered shmira vis-a-vis that. Umitoich she'ain elu etzel elu ki'ilu loy shemrua. It's like you don't watch it all. Gozer behem bivgedehem. They were gozer and they begodim. Since again the level of shmira is only for their level, they were gozer shema yishkav bohem ishtay nida. Perhaps his wife, who was a nida, would go and sit down on their beged. Hey midras hanida. It's the pressing of a nida. We explain in Perak HaShoichet. So therefore, the midras that you're worried about is a tumah of stepping on someone, putting pressure on something, being a tumah. Yes, Hesh.
So would that mean if that would that mean if because it's a rabbanan, if it's a suffix, it would all be good? In other words, to the next level. Correct. If I had in mind, I didn't know what I had in mind, it would all be good.
Correct. Suffix to rabbanan l'kula, right? Suffix to rabbanan l'kula. That's the difference. The main thing is that all these are the rabbanan the ketumas, and therefore what in a place of suffix we could find a place to be makel. Concluding the Mishnah. Yosef ben Yezer Yosef ben Yezer was mamish the Hasidim of the Kuna. Yosef mit Bachasai and his handkerchief was midrash the Kodesh. It was midrash the Kodesh. You hear this? Yochanan ben Gugada hoya oichel al taras the Kodesh. He would eat all his chulin. He would teach like it's mamish kachim. Kol yama b'yisem b'say midrash the chatas. It was the tuma linen kachim. So again, this is all the rabbanans, but again, you get the gist of the Mishnah. The basic premise of Tumah V'Taira, and you'll at the end of this Masechta, you know a lot about Tumah V'Taira. It's very interesting. In Shas, we have here and there, we have Shpreklich of Tumah V'Taira. I'm speaking of the sugis of Tumah V'Taira. Where do you have? You have this the famous thing in Psachim, right? You have
Chananya Cheskana Kohanim.
Yeah, it's like Chananya Cheskana Kohanim. Then we have in Perak Arova Roitiv in Chulin. There's a whole Perak that deals with Tumah V'Taira, and this is Sugya Tumah V'Taira. I forgot. These are the sugyas, right? These are the sugyas of Tyrus. So this is what's geschmack about this is it's an extension of it. So we'll get into it a little bit. Okay, but my Rebbe Zatzal said before the war, he had Mamish whole Kuntresim written on Tumah B'Taira. He lost it in the war. I said, I think he wanted to open yeshiva to learn Tumah B'Taira, but I guess it wasn't, a big bargaining chip at those times. Like imagine Bisman is there, probably it would be because no one does it. But at the time, there's a whole sefer, the Radzina Chasidim. There's a sefer called Sidrei Tahira. The Radzina Chasidim, the Radzina Rebbe is noted more for his tcheles, but it was a huge goin. He wrote a sefer called Sidrei Tahira, which he went ahead and created literally all the sugyas and like in the form of a Gemara, and he put on the side of it, he put his Perushim to explain the Gemara. It says Sidrei Tahira. Says the Gemara. The first din in the Mishnah was that you have to wash your hands for chulin l'maisa sheni. Now, again, mehechetesa. They're both at best. The hands are a sheni, right? So where do you find that? What do you find the level of shlishi by chulin and maisa? You only file it by truma, so it's a gavaldik kasha. Why would it be necessary to wash my hands for chulin and maisa sheni? After all, sheni touches a chulin, it's not metamed. Touches maisa sheni, it's not metamed. It's only metamed truma. Why would you require natilas yadayim, which is a sheni, for what? For anything less than truma, such as chulin and maisa sheni? Or a minol, as you a stira, ha truma ba bikurim, truma and bikurim, chayav malayim. Truma and Bikurim. Guys, Bikurim is Trumas Yadcha, the Torah says, Illa Bikurim. So Bikurim, the 7 fruits they would bring, often the 7 fruits very small, that would bring up at Shavuos time and say in Pashas Kisavo, that, and they give it to the Kohen, that is a din of Truma, and therefore the following halachas would apply to it as well as Truma. Chayav la Misa, if a person eats it, a Zor, a non-Kohen eats it b'mezid, he be chayav Misa b'dei Shemayim. V'chaimish, if he eats it accidentally, he has to pay the keren, he has to pay the principal, and an additional knas of a chaimish or a quarter of the amount he ate. The asal is zarim, they're both asal to zarim. The hey nichse kayin, the kayin can be mekadesh and isha, you can buy an eved with it. In other words, it's his money to do whatever he wants with it. For oilim be'echad umeya, as opposed to stam isuri taruvis, which is bottled b'shishim, this is bottled b'meya. You need 100. You need 100 keneged or 101. You need one, the thing of Isra itself, of the Bikurim itself, you need 100 keneged to mevatel it. V'tu'unim netilas yadayim. And this is what we need. And Bikurim and Truma require netilas yadayim. And the obvious question is what? Mashma wad, chulin, and ma'aser sheni don't. For Erev Shemesh, they require to eat them, they require Erev Shemesh. First Mishnah that we learned in Masech the Brachas, right? When's the time of Kriya Shema? Shalarvis bisman shekahanim v'chasnu to truma, the kahanim that would tamei that day, and they would come in Erev Shemesh. Mashen came ma'aser sheni. You don't need Erev Shemesh for. Go to the mikveh. You put the ma'aser sheni, ma'aser rishon. Hariela b'truma ubikurim. These halachas apply to truma ubikurim. Mashen came b'ma'aser. The kosh came b'chulin. So kosher ma'aser. Our Mishnah says ma'aser requires netilas yadayim. The Mishnah in bikurim says it doesn't. Kosher chulin achulin. It's shver chulin achulin. Our Mishnah says what chulin requires netilas yadayim. The Mishnah bikurim says it doesn't. It says bishleim ma'aser kasha is not a problem. Hareb meir harabonon, who we're going to meet in a second. That nan kol hatoyin, a Mishnah in para. Kol hatoyin bias mayim midivrei seifrim. Anyone who has to go into the water midrabanon mitame es hakodesh, who will go ahead and be mitame kodesh, who poisel as a truma. It will make, again, tummy means that it's mitame it, that it can be mitame something else. Poisel means that what it stops over there. So something that guys outside, something that's a sheni can be mitame kachim. So of course the kachim is now a shlishi, and a kachim can be mitame one more level to revi. So it's mitame kachim, but it only passes truma because a sheni can make truma a shlishi, but truma cannot pass it on to the next level. It can't become a revi. So that's the lashon of mitama. It has the capacity to transfer one more level at least, and according to Poisel, it would go ahead by it and it would end right there. So anything that requires to go in the mikvah, b'derei soifrim mitama sekadosh posla truma, umuto lechulin ulamaisa yemutin chulamaisa de remeya. These are the words of remeya. So the brisa of bikurim and pashtus is the Mishnah of bikurim is remeya, who says that what maisa does not require netilas yadayim. The Chacham Moisrim, right? B'maisa, and the Chacham Masa b'maisa. So our Mishnah would be what? The Chachamim. Our Mishnah that said that bias mind that you wash your hands is also be the chachamim. That's our Mishnah. And the Mishnah in Bikurim that said that Tilas Yadayim is not required for Maisa would be what? Would be Remeya. However, Elachulin Achulin Kasha. What do you do with Chulin Achulin? Our Mishnah says Chulin requires the Tilas Yadayim, and the Mishnah in Bikurim says it doesn't. It says no Loi Kasha. Kam Ba'achila, Kam Benegia. Our Mishnah that requires the Tilas Yadayim is speaking L'inyan Achila, and the Mishnah in Bikurim that says does not require Tilas Yadayim is speaking about Negia, just touching it. So then we have a teretz. Our Mishnah is, again, so to take care of the Maisa problem, our Mishnah is the Chachamim, and the Mishnah in Bikurim is Remeya. To deal with the Chulin problem, our Mishnah is speaking about Achila, and the Mishnah in Bikurim is speaking about Negia. Maskal Rav Simi Barashi, Ad Kanle Pligi Rabbanallah the Remeya, Ela Ba'achila the Maisa. Aval Benegia the Maisa, Uba'achila the Chulin Le Pligi. Oh, I got a problem. You said our Mishnah is according to the Chachamim. You said our Mishnah is speaking about what? So a Chachamim Linyan Maisa. Linyan Achila, Chulin is speaking Linyan Achila. Our Mishnah is the Chachamim. The Chachamim Amoida by Chulin, by Achila, you do not eat at Netilas Yadayim. Again, we have there's two steers. Maisa and Chulin. We dealt with the Maisa part by saying the Mishnah in Kurim is Meya, our Mishnah is the Chachamim. And how we deal with the Chulin part, this is speaking about eating, this is speaking about touching, and our Mishnah is speaking about eating. But 1 second, you said our Mishnah is the Chachamim say by eating, you don't have to wash your hands. Back to the original question. What are you going to do about Chulin? They're both speaking about Achila. They're both speaking about Achila. So 1 second. So if they're both speaking about Achila, why do I require washing in our Mishnah, and I do not require in the Mishnah in Chulin in Bikurim to wash? Like Kasha, Kam Ba'achila de Nahama, Kam Ba'achila de Peri. It depends. What are you eating? Are you eating fruit or are you eating bread? Our Mishnah is describing you eating bread. Since you're eating bread, you require what? You require the Tilas Yadayim. The Mishnah in Bikurim that says that you're eating, that does not require the Tilas Yadayim, is speaking about you're eating what? You're eating fruit. The Amar Rav Nachman, Kol Anoita Yadav LePeris. Anyone who washes his hands for Peris, Harizem Migasei HaRuach. He's considered what? From the Gasei HaRuach. He's considered from people who are Balei Gaiva. So that's the final teretz. Again, what's Akasha? Our Mishnah says what? That you require Tilas Yadayim. The Mishnah in Bikurim says you don't. It says the Gemara. It's speaking about Achila. It's not the Mishnah is according to everyone's opinion. Rabbi and the Chachamim. We don't have to say that anymore. Well, again, for the Maisa part, I guess we do have to say that. But speaking about Achila, the Chachamim would be moida that by Achila of Chulin of bread, everyone cries for Tilas Yadayim because we spoke about guys. The reason is Srach Truma. Truma comes from Dagan. Midaraisa comes from Dagan. But Paris, to wash your hands with Paris, that's only Megasei Ruach, you're a Balgaiva, and that's the Mishnah in Bikurim. Okay, everyone should have a great day. We'll see you Bez Hashem tomorrow night.